Welcome into No Boundaries, a Cricket World Cup special here on Sky Sport. Good to have you with us on the program today. And what a game of cricket it was. The usual suspects, Mitch McClenaghan with me in studio and Mike Hesson down in Dunedin. Good to see you both, gentlemen. Hess, I'm not sure on a World Cup weekend of rugby and cricket how good this is for the heart, the anxiety levels, but what a game of cricket that was over in India, Australia and the Blackcaps. It was a stunner.
Yeah, I think those that actually managed to stick around for the whole time would have seen a heck of a spectacle. I mean, when you're chasing a score like that, you have to have everything go your way to give yourself a chance at the back end. And certainly from a batting point of view, that's one of the best chasers I've seen from a New Zealand side. Against a high-quality attack, certainly on a very good surface, fast outfield. But to give yourself a chance of getting less than 100 in the last 10 overs with wickets in hand was a superb effort to set that up. And obviously, Rachin Ravindra was the star.
Chasing 389, Mitch, I think most of us after sort of 10, 15, 20 overs thought, OK, well, this clearly is only going one way, the way that Warner and Travis Head batted together. But as Hess said, just the fight back, the courage to come back into that game. They talked about it at the unpack Cummins, just the way New Zealand kept coming back at them. I mean, there's lots to take from that. I know it's a 5-run loss, came up just short, but an extraordinary effort considering where we were at the start of the day.
Yeah, what it showed me was that during the innings break, they were obviously pretty clear and calm in terms of the way they were going to go about that chase, and obviously seeing how the wicket played and how Aussie were able to play the full array of shots and how easy it was to score boundaries. They felt like if they stayed or got off to a steady start, didn't lose early wickets, they'd be able to take the game deep. And I think the method that they went about chasing that total was impressive. Yes, they had that steady start, but they really took on the first couple of balls of the over, which just got them ahead of the over every time, and it just made getting 8-9 runs and over very easy.
Yes, for Travis Head to come back in and play his first World Cup game, having had no cricket, I think he had a few tennis balls, to come back in and strike the ball the way he did, control that innings so beautifully, and in partnership with Warner too. It was really extraordinary to watch a guy come back and play so well.
Yeah, look, it was. And I think New Zealand played a little bit of a part. I mean, to do that against the likes of Henry and Bolt, who have been superb throughout this World Cup, or Henry in particular. But New Zealand weren't at their best with the ball. Let's be honest about that. And it gave Travis Head an opportunity to get a good start. And boy, he took it, didn't he? In terms of the way he struck the ball. Second ball, hitting the ball on the up, over the top of mid-off. And then he got a couple of free hits and he was away. So, I mean, he got a little bit of a head start, but no pun intended, and he was exceptional in terms of, his striking ability, and him combined with David Warner. Geez, it was a tough first hour, wasn't it, as a New Zealand supporter, to sit there and watch. It was tough, and no one could wait for the Bangladesh-Netherlands game to start, so you could sort of flick between the two. But I think the way New Zealand fought back with the ball was exceptional. But yeah, you're right. Travis Head was in a different level altogether.
Mitch, one thing I like about World Cups and tournament cricket is you see guys who don't necessarily have to step up in that moment. They do. And Glenn Phillips, I thought, had a special day, a special moment. I thought he bowled wicket to wicket really well, and he was busy, gave the energy. It was just great to see with Lockie, ruled out after 3 overs, that a guy stepped up like GP, who's there for his batting really, and he did so well.
Yeah, we've spoken about before. Ian Smith thinks he's less than part-time bowler. And look, he's much more than that. He really is. He's impressed me throughout this tournament so far. He got an opportunity to bowl a full allotment. That's the first time he's bowled 10 overs in one-day cricket for New Zealand. I thought it was very impressive. You touched on the line. I thought his length was impeccable. He didn't give a step hit. He didn't give a drag down for them to score freely. And his period against Mitchell Marsh was very impressive. Mitchell Marsh only scored 10 runs off 23 balls. To be able to contain Mitchell Marsh, who Hess will say has seen on the back end of Mitchell Marsh taking down spinners, particularly in Perth in one test match. I remember carrying the drinks for a moment. He's a class batter, and construct the ball extremely well, particularly on those boundaries. For an off-spinner to contain Mitchell Marsh was impressive.
Hess, at what stage do you think Tom Latham was going, damn, we got the toss wrong, we should have batted? And do you think that maybe affected them a little bit psychologically as particularly the first 15, 20 overs through the power play wore on?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because as the game wore on and New Zealand batted, it was like, well, that's actually pretty good ground to chase on, but you just didn't want to have to chase 389, obviously. So, look, I think after 2 overs, he would have thought, wow, we've hit the ground a little bit slow here. and Australia certainly weren't going to have a softening period. They came after us straight away. So I think he would be disappointed. I mean, Matt Henry was a little bit sloppy, obviously, with a couple of no balls. And he wasn't his usual self in terms of his length. He bowled a little bit short to Warner, which is one thing you don't do. And then to head, he did bowl a lot of step hits. So he wasn't at his best, which is, understandable. I mean, he's not a robot, and he has been exceptional for a couple of years in white ball cricket for New Zealand. Trent Boult fought back really well. But yeah, Phillips probably started maybe 3 overs too late. I think when your next 5 batters are all right-handers, you really want to get that off-spinner in as early as possible and at least try and blunt those step hits and the ability to hit with the spin. So, that was probably one small thing that Tom Latham could potentially have done differently. But, like the viewers, it was a little bit deer in the headlights stuff, really, those first 10 to 30 overs, really. We'll
talk about how they powered toward the end of the innings, Australia, Mitch, but I think one thing, and you'd agree here, is that, I think you were sort of predicting a 340. He was predicting maybe 340 would be max that the Black Caps would kind of chase. So we probably let them get away with 40-odd runs. In fact, we dropped, 5 or 6 catches. We had the run out as well. And usually an area, especially of late, we've been pretty sharp in the field.
Yeah, it's been a mixed bag this tournament so far in terms of our fielding. Usually leading into this tournament have been outstanding, but some of the grounds it's a little bit difficult to see, particularly Dharamshala under lights. But lights weren't an issue this time round, and you're absolutely right. The 40 runs extra that they got was basically, we dropped Travis Head twice when he was in his 70s. I think Mitchell Santner dropped him diving to his right, a tough caught and bowled chance, and then Glenn Phillips 4 overs later had a chance off Rachin Ravindra, and that was travelling. It really was travelling. And look, I'm not saying that I would have been able to catch that, but you've got some of the best fielders like Glenn Phillips and Mitchell Santner in the world, and you'd expect them to take those 50-50 chances. And against the best sides, against the best players, to win, that's what's got to happen. You've got to take those chances.
Just before we get into the second innings, Mitch, how much of an impact did Lockie Ferguson's exit have on that bowling attack and going forward in this tournament, depending on how bad the Achilles is, with the mix that they go with, how's it going to affect the Black Caps, do you think?
Well, in this game in particular, it definitely affected it. Some good and some bad. You've got Glenn Phillips, you've got 10 overs and he bowled exceptionally well, 3 for 37. So those overs are taken care of nicely. And then Jimmy Neesham had the job of finishing off at the death, and you could see he was short of his stride. I think Jimmy Neesham himself will probably walk away from that and go, well, I had 2 drop catches in the last 2 overs. Poor me, I probably deserved a couple of extra wickets. But as a bowler and looking onside as a fan, like I looked at it in terms of he probably didn't execute. I think he probably maybe executed 1 or 2 deliveries out of those 12 deliveries, and one of those ones which he didn't execute, Maxwell made a mistake. So I think that's probably, if Jimmy Neesham's going to be in that position again, he's going to have to execute better in that role. But hopefully whoever comes in for Lockie, if he's ruled out of the tournament, they've got Kyle Jamieson there. But that doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence in terms of our finishing off at the death. So Southey might come straight into that lineup.
Chasing 389 to win against Australia. Hess, I think the Black Caps came out to the blocks pretty well, Conway and Young. I guess the frustrating thing from a batting perspective at the top of the, they were going so well, they were set and probably a little bit meekly dismissed down the leg side. Good start, but we saw that throughout the New Zealand innings. Probably didn't have enough people set, particularly batting around Rachin Ravindra.
Yeah, I think Mitch mentioned it earlier on. I think the calmness of the chase was impressive. I think the way Devon and Young, he just played some really good cricket shots. And often when you chase a score like that, you can be 3 for 20, sort of slogging it up in the air because you have to play shots from the start. So to get to 60 as quickly as we did was really impressive. And I mean, Devon's got 1 down the leg side. He's obviously there's not much more he could have done with that. I mean, it's a bit of a freebie, heck of a catch. I'm sure he might have preferred to go up and under, but there's not much more he could have done. Youngie's got beaten by the bounce, really, hasn't he? He's tried to go a little bit harder at it when it's bounced. And you're right, surely they got a start. You would have liked them to have gone on, but they did give us a start, and they did get us sort of up with the run rate. So it probably, Mitchell was the one who looked like he had the game under control, scoring it better than a runner ball, and him and Rachin were a really nice combination. So that to me was something that, if Mitchell was able to get another 30 or 40, that leaves a bit less for others to do. But crikey, you can look at that chase in so many different ways, can't you? It was a heck of a chase. And, all in all, Rachin had said with the start.
And Mitch, you could argue, I mean, as Hess is alluding to, that the batting really wasn't the issue here. It's the fact we just leaked so many runs in that first innings, the top of the order and at the end of the innings. But Rachin Ravindra, I mean, what is it about this guy that is just speaks star quality? I mean, he's doing this on the highest stage in India in those conditions against Australia. It was just, again, a clinic to watch and a wonderful innings. Got us close, but just not quite close enough.
Yeah, look, I think off the bat, the first thing that comes to mind is composure. He looks calm. He looks composed at the crease. He looks like he knows his game very well. Technically, he's very sound. Looks like he's very well trained, very well coached, very well drilled. And I think just the way that he's come into this tournament and taken his opportunities. He before this tournament, he probably wasn't in, with Michael Bracewell being fit, he probably wasn't in this 15. And he's come into Michael Bracewell's slot. And then when Kane Williamson goes down, he comes up to number 3 and excels. And for me, that just shows that mentally he's a league above other players that we've seen come into this side, and his temperament under pressure is sensational.
Yes, I guess Australia too had their woes in the field. I mean, they were pretty sharp at the end there on some of their boundary fielding to restrict New Zealand in that final over. But, they had their moments too where they fluffed a few and dropped a couple and probably kept New Zealand in the contest. Ravindra went down as well.
Yeah, I mean, everyone was talking about the outfield, weren't they? And Durham Charlotte outfield was poor, it was soft, it was bumpy, it was, it was tough to field, but it was probably more the drop catches in the daytime that would stand out, and two very good sides who both field much better than that. So whether that's the pressure, it's probably a big part of that, in terms of the pressure that's created from a batting point of view, where you're always under the pump and you almost sense a little bit of relief. But yeah, as I said, both sides won't field as poorly as that. And I think, New Zealand heading to Pune, obviously much better outfield. And I think, after getting this Australia game out of the way, looking at the score or look at the table now, New Zealand just probably need one good win out of the next 3 to pretty much guarantee themselves a slot.
Mitch, when you talk about the way that New Zealand batted around Rachin Ravindra, and you mentioned Daryl Mitchell, he was great with 54, but Latham 21, Glenn Phillips 12, probably that middle order, right? We didn't quite continue the momentum, those regular wickets, just kept Australia slightly more on the front foot. I mean, Neesham came in and obviously played a good hand with a cameo there at the end, 58, but just that middle order, if we maybe could have fashioned a few more runs, but more of a supporting act with Rachin.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that would have been helpful, definitely. There's no doubt about that. With Tom Latham and Glenn Phillips, when they came to the crease, what I did notice is that they struggled to get that first boundary, get their innings underway, and that could build a lot of pressure and build pressure on Rachin as well. But look, they probably could have hung in a little bit longer. I know that it's easy to say from the sidelines, but they had more time than they thought. But if Glenn Phillips takes that game another 4 or 5 overs deeper, when he was going, even he didn't need to hit out right then, Rachin had got the score rate up, could have been a different story. But yeah, you touched on Neesham as well. He was impressive, and as much as I say his bowling wasn't up to the mark, there was a very impressive innings with the bats, and you can see that he should actually just be there as a batter at number 7. I thought he was impressive.
What was going through your head, Hess, when you watched that last over and you went into it? I mean, we were right there, weren't we? We were right there in the box seat. Just a couple of blows out of the middle, and it would have been a completely different story. I guess, from your perspective, having been here before at this tournament and knowing what it takes and what the players go through, yes, it's a 5-run defeat for the Blackcaps, but how much do you take out of a game like that, knowing that you would have gone for a record chase, would have been a fantastic victory, also close, but for what they do in the tournament, that's not going to decide the tournament for Australia or New Zealand. But what does it do for the Blackcaps potentially?
Well, I think it shows what they can do from a chasing perspective, and I for one thought that 389 was probably beyond our New Zealand batting lineup against a good attack. So there would have been plenty of confidence that comes from that, because it came from different players. It wasn't your usual suspects. So I think that in itself will provide the change room plenty of confidence. And it'll also provide some relatively calm learnings in terms, and I hate using that word, but it'll go, hey, look, we got that close, but geez, there's so many areas we could be much tidier in. And sure, the batting, you're right. I mean, Glenn Phillips, Tom Latham. I mean, Tom Latham plays the reverse sweep. There's a little bit of topspin. So I don't think his option was too bad. Glenn Phillips, I'm not quite sure where he was trying to hit that ball. Like, he looked a little bit clouded in that innings, so hopefully he'll be better off for that. Next time he's under pressure, just to choose his options and actually commit to them. But from a bowling and fielding point of view, there's plenty to learn from. You know, I, for one, when Mitchell Starc bowled that 5 wides down leg side, I was just pretty much like, you just need to hit one into the stands here, Jimmy.
Yeah.
And you'll just see that whole Australian lineup, because they were starting to twitch already. You know, Mitchell Starc was under the pump. There's plenty of people running in, trying to give him a little bit of advice. And it just needed one. And even the one that Jimmy got run out to, I mean, that was pretty close to a fully in terms of over the waist as well. So it was really fine margins. And even the one that Labuschagne dived and saved and only went for 2. I mean, Jimmy Neesham played an exceptional hand there and gave New Zealand a good chance. So I was just hoping for his own confidence that he would have got us over the line.
Yeah, I think when you're chasing a score close to 400, you have to pretty much play the perfect game. And I think the way we were able to at the top, I think Youngie and Dev, put us off to a fantastic start. And then obviously Rachin played a fantastic knock. One of the better ones you'll see chasing in a game of cricket. Obviously, to get so close, it was a great effort, and pretty proud of the guys.
So we just heard from Tom Latham there. South Africa next test for New Zealand. They've been in some fantastic form too. How do you see this one shaping up, and how we might see the Black Caps go about their business after that 5-run defeat to Australia?
Yeah, I think you've got to get South Africa chasing. I think that's probably a pretty simple one based on what's happened so far in this World Cup. I don't think you'd win the toss and chuck them in. I just think, Lockie Ferguson's probably unlikely to play the next one, even if it's precautionary. And even if the scans come back and there's nothing major, I don't think you could risk him at this stage. Whether he needs to be replaced, time will tell. So therefore, Tim Southee comes in, probably a ground that suits him in terms of there is a cross breeze there. The ball does swing at Pune. You generally, the likes of Trent Boult and Tim Southee could potentially have to take the new ball, which will give Matt Henry a slightly different role, but that's something that New Zealand will need to consider. They're going to have to make early inroads into that South African attack, and if they don't, then we've seen that firepower through the middle with the likes of Klaasen and Miller, who are just in fine form. The Cock at the top, who's obviously just banging out runs for fun. So New Zealand are going to be put under pressure. And probably after 2 losses, just the confidence will be starting to wane a little bit, even though both of those losses were decent performances. So it's a massive game in Pune. Slightly lower bouncing surface, so that will potentially take that South African bounce bowlers out of the equation. But yeah, different challenge, and one that New Zealand are going to have to step up for.
What sort of impact does Tim Southee make against South Africa, Mitch?
Oh, experience. It's tournaments are a funny thing, right? Often IPL or World Cups, you see the young guys get off to a good start, and as the tournament goes on, they taper off and their performances start to diminish, and that's when your experienced players come into a tournament and they know they've been there, they've done that, and they come in and they actually have really big impacts towards the back end of a tournament. And for New Zealand's sake, I hope that's Tim Southee. I hope that's what's going to happen in this tournament. Hess is right. Pune, there's probably a chance of some swing up front, so Boult and Southee might take that new ball, and just a bit more leadership on the field as well. Boult's it long on, long off, but Southee will be there mid on, mid off as well, and just be able to help Tom Latham a little bit more in terms of making sure the bowlers have got the right plan. So don't underestimate how much that experience and that leadership will count for Tim Southee if he gets back into that lineup.
And yes, also too, I suppose, in the wash-up from the Australia game, they'll look at this, and what are the sort of things, we've talked about it today on the show, but what do you think they'll be looking at technically, perhaps at the way they played, some of the strategy that they employed in that game against Australia that they might look to maybe change up a little bit against South Africa?
Well, I think you just revert back to what you're good at. Matt Henry is a very good length bowler in terms of the places that he bowls, and tonight he didn't get it right. He either bowled too short to Warner or he bowled step hits and too full earlier on. So he can easily fix that. So I don't think he needs to reinvent the wheel. I mean, Trent Boult, ideally, if he can get some swing, he's a completely different bowler. And that's the thing we probably haven't seen from Trent up front so far in this World Cup. He hasn't been able to take those wickets early on. He's going to be bowling to de Kock, a left-hander who loves to hit the ball through the offside. So his margin for error will be small. So I think hopefully the conditions will allow the likes of Trent to get that confidence because the ball will shape. And if it does, he can bring in both the inside and the outside edge. I think Satner will be good in terms of being able to bowl to both left and right-handers. Would have got a bit of confidence around how well Phillips bowled, so he could potentially be used early on against De Kock. Even though some other sides have used it and they haven't quite got it right, I think Phillips, the fact he bowls wicket to wicket, the fact he can spin it if he has to, will bring in the LBW on the bowl against De Kock, which is often he is quite vulnerable early on. So I think we've got the right players. We just have to get back to what we do best with the ball.
In terms of pressure, Mitch, at this stage of the tournament, probably 2 wins from the next few games to guarantee your place in the semi-finals. Yep. The Blackcaps, they've been dealing with pressure well for a few years now in terms of the big game stuff, but how does that affect their mindset, knowing that they've got to start, banking some wins and they're running out of road?
Yeah, look, the start of the tournament, barring that England game, was always going to be the easiest part of the tournament for New Zealand. It was going to be this middle period where the focus was going to be on how they were going to perform. And unfortunately, have dropped the game to India, now to Australia, and they run into a red-hot South Africa. So, you can slide down on that hill in terms of form and not getting across the line. So, a little bit nervous as a New Zealand cricket fan because losses tend to roll together, as do wins. So, I'm really hoping that they can get back on the winning side of the ledger this time because you don't want to be rolling into that Pakistan game where it's a must-win for both sides.
Yes, Kane Williamson, he comes back in at some point into the fold. We know the impact that's going to have on the team in terms of motivation and attitude and whatnot, but in terms of your batting order and your lineup, how do you tinker with it, bringing Kane back?
Yeah, I think similar to what they had earlier on. So, he just comes in for Will Young and Rachin bats at the top of the order. I think the rest is pretty straightforward. So, and I think he will add the calmness as well. And we talked about Tim Southee in terms of what he'll add, but you add Tim and you add Kane out in the middle, that adds a heck of a lot of experience, a heck of a lot of calmness to that bowling attack and gives them a lot of help. And probably just, it doesn't put so much onus on Tom Latham. He's got to worry about keeping, he's got to worry about batting in the middle order. He's done an exceptional job. But, crikey, you add Southee and Kane to that attack, or to that fielding unit, and there's a lot more calmness. And you're going to need that in Bangalore. Bangalore, the last 2 games are going to be high-scoring affairs. So you are going to be put under the pump again with the ball. So the fact the earlier we can get Kane back for those last 2 games, that'll finish us up quite nicely from a balance perspective. And alluding to Mitch's point, that's when you want your experience on the park, the back end of the tournament.
Mike Hesson, enjoy your day in the greatest city on earth down in Dunedin. Go the All Blacks, and we look forward to seeing you next time, Mitch McClenaghan. As always, thanks very much for coming in, and we look forward to the game against South Africa. And we'll catch you next time here on No Boundaries on Sky Sport. More Cricket World Cup action coming your way.